Good evening. Welcome to St. Paul's. My name is Stephen King. I'm the rector, senior pastor here. We are delighted to have you, that's loud, with us tonight. I'm delighted that you are here. Thank you for being present with us for this important conversation. We are going to begin with a word of prayer from our Bishop Provisional, Diane Jardine Bruce, Bishop. Here's a microphone for you.
The Lord be with you. Gracious and Holy One, our times are in your hands, and this is a very trying time, especially for some of the most vulnerable around us. May this conversation help us understand all of the nuances, the ins and outs, the things that we need to know to protect those around us and to do what is right for them. Lord, continue to guide and guard us during this time and give us open hearts and minds to hear and inwardly digest and know that this is an ever-changing landscape. And may we have the stamina to continue to listen deeply through these times, to know as time moves forward how we can respond in a very positive way to those around us. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, again, welcome. We're glad that you're here. I just wanted to set a couple of, before I introduce Sarah to my left, I want to set a couple of kind of what we are hoping to establish or what we are hoping to do tonight, set a couple of goals. We are hoping to not debate public policy tonight. That's not really the goal of tonight. We are hoping to have a conversation that helps us get some information to all of you and helps us to kind of do something with that feeling that we all sometimes have that's like, this thing is a big thing and I don't know what to do with that and I need somewhere to put my feelings. And so we hope to do that. We hope to inspire some discernment and conversation for you and your community, wherever you are, about how we might respond to that, this kind of central, for us, biblical command to welcome the stranger. We will have a time for question and answer. That might end up being the vast majority of our time. So if you have a question when we get to that point, do raise your hand and we will have a microphone brought to you to ask that question. We thought we had an immigration lawyer. So neither Sarah nor I feel competent in answering complex immigration law questions. I don't think. Maybe you do. Maybe you can give a little bit of a hedge here anyway. And I know that there's other lawyers here, but Michael's not here. And so we're going to have more of our conversation on Sarah's work, which I think will still be really important and is really important to the world right now. The Reverend Sarah Shipman is an Episcopal priest who served for just over 2 years, I think, as the director of Episcopal Migration Ministries, one of 9 National Refugee Resettlement. I said 10 this morning.
It's 10.
10, yes, I was right this morning. That was wrong now. 10. National Refugee Resettlement agencies that work with the United States government. You are an attorney, though, or you were an attorney, as Deputy Attorney General for Kansas and a graduate of Washburn School of Law. I can Google you just as well as anybody else can, Sarah. A point of personal privilege is that Sarah's son Jeremiah, when he was 8, I was his camp counselor. So I feel like I've known the Shipman family for a very long time. It's really, thank you for making the time to be here in the midst of a crazy and chaotic world, especially these days for you. So we're so grateful that you are in this place. Would you join me in welcoming Sarah? Sarah's just gotten back from traveling to be with the Episcopal Church's Executive Council, and she does work all over the Episcopal Church and all over the country. So I know that it's special to have you in this place tonight, and we're grateful for that. Could you just describe what EMM is Episcopal Migration Ministries, EMM does, and what it had been doing, and maybe what's changed, and kind of fill in those gaps for us?
Sure. Episcopal Migration Ministries is the migration and refugee resettlement agency of the Episcopal Church. We trace our history back to the late 1800s with port chaplaincies. We had Episcopalians on both coasts welcoming people to the United States. Officially, our start was with the Presiding Bishop's Fund for World Relief in the 1930s, when Episcopalians were welcoming those fleeing Nazi Germany. And so we have been doing refugee work as just people in the pews and Episcopalians since at least the 30s. In the late 1980s, we got our first grant from the federal government to be an official refugee resettlement agency. And so since 1988, we've resettled over 105,000 refugees from all across the world. We have programs that welcome them when they arrive in the United States and help provide for refugees for their first 90 days. And then we have other federal grants that provide services specifically related to employment and helping find employment, or case management for complex cases for especially vulnerable people who may have medical conditions, single-parent families. So that's the refugee resettlement piece. Last year, we welcomed over 6,000 refugees to the United States. This year, the federal fiscal year is a little different. So since October, we welcomed just over 2,000 refugees until mid-January. We were hoping to welcome 7,000 this year, but I don't think that will happen given all of the changes. But that's our refugee resettlement piece. There's about, until February 14th, there were 33 people on my team who did that. We are down to 11 people on my team who do that because of changes to the federal grants that have happened in the last few weeks. And Episcopal Migration Ministries also has a church-facing program where we work with dioceses and parishes in establishing their own ministries in their community based on what needs they have, what populations of people they have, what the community is looking for. We develop liturgical resources, educational resources. We can walk alongside you if your parish wanted to sponsor an asylum seeker. We could do that until about 6 weeks ago. That's a little bit different now as well due to some federal changes. But we work in refugee resettlement, and then we work in ministries to migrant communities.
So, what has specifically changed for you all? I think we know that money, in particular, is the main sort of thing that's been cut. How have you all been able to respond to that? What is the work like these days? If that sort of goal of 7,000 asylum seekers seems maybe less possible, what is your work?
So our contracts with the State Department were to welcome refugees into the United States. President Trump, in his first day in office, suspended all refugee arrivals in the U.S. As of January 27th, there would be no more refugees admitted to the United States. So we welcomed our last refugees on the 24th of January. That was the last day anybody was allowed into the U.S. as a refugee. We are continuing to serve those people who arrived on the 24th and those who arrived before that. But with no refugee arrivals coming, the team of people who is there to welcome them doesn't have anything to do. The other thing that happened on the 24th of January is the president also issued a suspension of work order and told us to stop serving any of our clients across the country. They would not be paying out any more funding to do that. So it's complicated. There are all sorts of executive orders. There are all sorts of court orders now fighting these things. What I can tell you that EMM is doing is continuing to serve all of those people who arrived prior to January 24th in all the ways that we served them under the last administration. So we are still providing food services, we're providing housing, we're providing their case management services. And I want to back up just a little bit. I neglected to mention that the EMM team of now 11, we don't do this alone. We have contracts all across the country with 15 different 501c3 organizations that actually are on the ground doing the work with the refugee resettlement. So we're sort of the middleman. We work with the government and we work with local social service organizations. There are some in Kansas City, not EMM affiliated, but affiliated with Catholic Charities. So we do similar work just in different parts of the country. We actually don't have any affiliate offices in Missouri or Kansas City, or in Missouri or Kansas, but we work other places across the country.
That segues into the next question
Okay.
I'm wondering about, which is kind of what, on the local level, right, for those of us, you know, presumably live in the Kansas City area here, what are you seeing kind of happening? What is the gap? Where are the spaces for people like this who might gather to step into, or what is the work you're seeing kind of like localized, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so all of we call them affiliates, all of the affiliate offices who do the work of actually welcoming people, finding them housing, helping them get jobs, enrolling their kids in schools, all of that happens at the local level. And all the time, whether it's now under President Trump or 2 years ago under the Biden administration when we were bringing more and more and more people into the United States, they always are looking for volunteer opportunities. There's all sorts of ways to work with newcomers, it used to be greeting them at the airport was always kind of fun, but that's not happening. But they often don't have transportation. They often don't speak English, so we have ESL classes that are taught by sometimes volunteers, sometimes local community colleges get involved with that. But what I would say is going to become the most important that we in the Episcopal Church are already very good at is feeding people. Those feeding ministries that you do every week or every day are going to become even more important, as are any of the other sort of social justice ministries you're involved in, clothing ministries. All of those things are going to become much more needed because not only have those of us who do this work under a contract with the federal government lost our funding for a lot of the work, but other changes that have happened to the status of different people in the United States means that there are hundreds of thousands of people who might lose whatever current immigration status they have, which would cause them to lose their ability to work. Right now there's over 700,000 people in the United States who are here under what's called temporary protected status. So they're allowed to be here, they are allowed to work, they are allowed to do all of the things all of the rest of us are able to do as if they were a citizen of the United States. But that status is temporary, and the president has the authority to revoke that status. And we are hearing that those statuses are being revoked or that they're expiring. And what usually happens is the president will extend the expiration date because it's not safe for people to go back home. But that's not happening, so that status is being allowed to expire. And with that expiration, they lose their green card, which means they can't legally work in the United States. And so there will be there's the possibility of hundreds of thousands of people losing the ability to work. And so those helping ministries are going to become ever more important.
I talk for a living, so I'm very glad to keep riffing on questions up here, asking more questions, but I wonder if anybody, as we've gotten through a couple here, is ready to ask Sarah a question. Is anybody itching? Yeah.
And I will say that I can try to answer some of the questions. We do at Episcopal Migration Ministries and through the Office of Government Relations, we host a weekly webinar every Tuesday at noon that goes over immigration changes. We also have the attorney for the Episcopal Church, the chief legal counsel for the Episcopal Church on those calls with us, and he answers all sorts of questions. So if I'm not able to get to it today, We'll be online on Tuesday at noon answering questions again if I don't know the answer today.
Great. Jose, would you mind running back to? We're also on our streaming here, so.
Okay, and I just may not know some things other people do here, so this may be basic, but if 700,000 people, immigrants, have temporary status, and there's no way probably in the near future for that temporary status to be extended, then at some point we will have 700,000 people we know right now who will be what? I mean, what will be their future in the United States? And once you've lost temporary status, are you eligible at that point to be arrested by ICE and deported and put in a detention center and expelled from the country? Is that the natural thing that would happen?
There are all sorts of statuses that you
Okay.
can have as an immigrant. One of them is temporary protected status. It is temporary. It does give you the opportunity to work and have a green card. If that temporary status expires, then you would be staying beyond your legal ability to do so and would at that point become undocumented, which would then make you subject to anything that any other undocumented immigrant is subject to at this time, including deportation.
We were just talking about this morning in a meeting, and one of the things that I understand from an attorney can be done is that once someone who currently has TPS can apply as an asylum seeker, and then they go into another status, but they are protected, if anyone is protected in these days, under that other status, because they're legally within the asylum system.
The process, yes. So my suggestion would be whatever, if you have any status that is not citizen, do whatever you can to get to the next status that gets you one step closer to being a citizen. So if that is somebody on temporary protected status, then yes, apply for asylum and see if you fall into the criteria to be granted asylum. That process has about a 10-year backlog right now. So nobody knows what's going to happen to all of the folks who are in that process of seeking asylum. But that would be a step you could take to try and improve your status if you are not, and what's there, once you are given a hearing, you are considered an asylee seeking asylum. So, yeah. There's one over here.
Hi, I'm from St. Andrews, and we, because EMM doesn't have a Kansas City office, we've been working with JVS, Jewish Vocational Services, which is one of the other 10.
Yes.
And so they're going through exactly what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so aside from food, as you mentioned, that we could do, what can we do as a church to help these people through this, traumatic time, do you think?
So I think this is a great opportunity for discernment. It sort of depends on what your gifts are in your parish. Different parishes have all sorts of different gifts and different ministries that would make sense for them. We're working with the Washington National Cathedral right now. They are fortunate that they have connected to their parish a lot of folks who are immigration attorneys. So they are hosting clinics for people for family preparedness, getting your documentation in order, taking care of power of attorney and getting that prepared, making sure you have phone numbers ready. If God forbid somebody was picked up and deported and your child was at school that you had somebody to call to take care of your children. So there's everything from getting involved in your local immigration bar association and conducting workshops and helping to the feeding ministries, the clothing ministries, the offers of support. If you work with JVS, they're going to be able to tell you exactly what it is that they need as an organization and what their immigrants or their refugees need. If you own a business and can hire somebody, that's going to be great, because one of the things that's difficult is finding a job, especially when you're new to the country and you may not speak the language. So it really depends on the gifts of your parish. Episcopal Migration Ministries on our website has sort of a quiz called Ways to Welcome, and it helps you assess where you are and what your parish might be gifted at and what you might be able to do. Anything from writing a check to sponsoring a family as they are going through the asylum process. And so it asks a series of discerning questions to help you navigate where you might be, because no amount of volunteering is too small. But also there are some things that some parishes are equipped for and others may not be. So I would suggest you go to emm.org and you will find the Ways to Welcome questionnaire, and then somebody from my team will respond back to you. Thank you. You're welcome.
I don't mean to monopolize, but one of the things that is the biggest need right now in our Kansas City area for immigrants at all levels is housing. Mm-hmm. And so any kind of help that can be provided in that area is really, really crucial right now. Guadalupe Center is one place that is kind of coordinating a lot of the immigrants who need housing. Jerusalem Farm is another one. There are several places that are trying to help fill this need, but it is a major need right now. So if you have a spare apartment you want to give at a very good price, now would be the time.
Yeah, the lack of affordable housing hits everybody, but especially hits the immigrant community hard.
There's two questions before I want to turn the conversation. I've seen, Paul, I see that person back there.
Well, I'm confused because I thought that the asylum program was shut down, that there is no more asylum program. Is that not true?
Well, everything changes every day, unfortunately. So I don't know that they are, I can't answer that exactly because it does change so quickly. The way the asylum program works is, in order to claim asylum, you have to get to the border of the United States and ask for asylum. The Biden administration had created an app online that let you set an appointment to get to a judge to make your claim for asylum. They have shut down that app, and they are not letting anybody come into the United States and claim asylum. If you get to the border, there's the Remain in Mexico policy, where you can't actually come to the US and seek asylum. But if you are already here under temporary protected status, then you could still seek asylum. But you can't cross the border, the southern border specifically. I don't know how many people are crossing the northern border seeking asylum. I think it's probably going the other way.
Some people are going to Canada. I have another question. There's a lot of rumors going around and coming from the president, and one of them was that if you do help a person, you could be put in jail. Now, is that true?
So here we're getting into the legal question. What I can say for sure is there are sanctions for harboring somebody who you know and you are actively trying to keep them from the authorities. However, if you are assisting somebody and you don't know their immigration status, then you haven't done anything wrong. You are being a good person. I suggest not asking people's immigration status. There's no reason any of us need to know what anybody's immigration status is.
We'll take one more and then we'll shift. Barbara, stay back.
Of the 105,000 refugees that you've helped, where
Yeah.
did most of them come from, and how are they coming in to the United States, and has that changed dramatically over the last couple of years?
So I would say since the fall of Afghanistan, the largest population of refugees we're getting are from Afghanistan. I can tell you, I have to look it up, but I did bring the numbers from last year. Last year, our largest were from Afghanistan, Venezuela, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Syria, Myanmar, Guatemala, Somalia. So those are where our largest populations were coming from. The way the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program works is somebody leaves their home country, gets to a second country and a refugee camp, and basically asks for asylum at that point. And then they are vetted through the United Nations and adjudicated, and it is determined that they do qualify as a refugee and cannot return home for those reasons that the United Nations and the United States have decided are reasons that you can't return home, and you are then named a refugee. At that point, you are vetted by the United States, and the United States then resettles you into the United States through one of the 10 of us. So every week we used to get lists of people who have been vetted and approved and are ready to travel, and then they come to us, they land in the US, and we decide which of our affiliate organizations is best able to serve them. So that's how they get here.
So are there a lot of people stuck at refugee camps now?
Yes, there are 112. I think there are over 100 million refugees in the world right now. At its height, the United States takes 125,000 refugees out of tens of millions minimum, and anecdotally, third generations are born in refugee camps, especially in Africa.
So I'm a priest, you're a priest. We
Yeah.
come at this in a particular way. We gather in a church. Many of you, because I know who you are Episcopalians, or I assume come from a faith community of some kind. We have called this event, Welcoming the Stranger, as a way to pick up the biblical commands that we have as Christians to welcome anybody who comes to our doors, right? In Matthew 25 or
Right.
Leviticus or whatever it might be, we hear Jesus' clear commands. So there's that work that sort of must be done, to my mind, by people of faith. And this feels overwhelming.
It does.
So I guess my question is, the question is simply stated, but it's a big question. Where is hope these days? What's good news you're seeing? Can you tell us where you see hope these days in your work?
Yes, and I think that right here is one of these places. The fact that so many people are engaged, mobilized. I mentioned that we do these webinars. We went from having 50 people a week come hear about everything that the Office of Government Relations is doing at the federal level to having 200 and 300 and 400 people a week paying attention. We've done some trainings on know your rights. We've done some trainings on family preparedness, and we're having over 1,000 people come to each of those trainings. So I think that what we are finding is that Episcopalians and others all across the faith community are saying, wait a minute, this is what we are commanded to do. We are to love our neighbor, and we are to welcome the stranger, and we are going to continue to do that, and we are going to speak loudly with one voice when that is threatened. So I see hope in being invited here. It's unfortunate that I'm having these conversations and talking about the fact that we've stopped refugee resettlement into the United States. But what is beautiful to me is that everybody's saying, wait a minute, we shouldn't do that. We should be welcoming people into our communities. They make our lives better, and we are going to call and write and come to events and welcome people.
So even sort of in the midst of the chaos, local faith communities are doing something that shows this love to the world. We prayed right this morning, if you were in an Episcopal church anyway, you prayed this morning that without love, whatever we do is worth nothing.
Yeah.
I find myself kind of in these days sort of pondering that. I mean, while I believe it, of course, it feels really hard right now to be holding that value as the supreme kind of value, right? That love really is the way for people who follow Jesus. And that does not feel like the thing that will win sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And yet you still see that happening.
I do, and I have to tell you a story that I heard just last week. There's a deacon, he's in the Diocese of the Rio Grande, so he's along the border all the time. And a big part of his ministry is ministering to ICE agents as their spirits and hearts are being broken with the things that they are being asked to do every day. He is there at the border ministering to them. And I think those are the things that separate us from and those are the things that show our love, is that we do love everyone and we minister to everyone. And it does feel enormous, and it feels like we aren't making a difference, but that deacon ministering to that ICE agent who didn't feel like he could go home to his family because he had to break up a family, is one of that's what we do here.
It reminds me of the parable of the sower that we hear. People that hang around me long enough are annoyed by my talk about this, but one of the things that always strikes me about that is that we hear that the beginning of that parable is that a sower went out to sow. I always wonder, well, what else did why do we have that sentence? What else were they supposed to do?
Right.
The sower went out to sow. That is their entire work. That is the sower's entire job. The sower's entire job is not to give growth to the plant. It's not to control whether that happens. It's not to manufacture this heroic, world-changing work, right? It's not to solve the problem of over 100 million
Right.
refugees in the world and the fact that only 125,000 end up, but rather to sow.
So what is mine to do today?
So what is our work to do today? Yeah, exactly right. That feels to me like the place that I want to come back to when the world feels bigger than I can comprehend. I don't know. Just a personal theory I'm working on, I guess.
No, I agree. I think you have to ask that question. I see this giant problem with millions of refugees around the world, but what can I do? And so what I can do is make sure that we're honoring the commitments we've made to the ones who have arrived. That's what I can do in my day job. What I can do when I'm at Grace Cathedral, my parish, is make another sandwich and hand out a sandwich, because our lines at our food pantry are double what they were. So that's what I can do today. Or I can call last night I was at an event for the Uniting for Ukraine program. Topeka has a lot of Ukrainian refugees. And so what I can do is host a baby shower for the new Ukrainian mom who doesn't speak English. She's new to the country, she's pregnant, and she doesn't know what to do. She's got a baby coming. What I can do is host a baby shower. So it's the small little acts that make a huge difference in someone's life.
That you never see coming, maybe too, right?
Right.
Yeah. Who knew there's a Ukrainian refugee population
In Topeka, Kansas, but there is. I think they've welcomed 58 Ukrainians in the last 2 years. No, 72 families. 72 families in the last 2 years from the Ukraine in Topeka. Go figure. And they all came actually through Catholic Charities out of Kansas City.
This might be confessing some bias here, but it seems to me that the narrative on these things, the public narrative on these sorts of conversations, and your point about the Ukrainian refugees in Topeka reminds me of this, is that we often hear sort of a particular story, right? It's often people that come from south of the United States border. It's often people who are have brown skin. It's often that are coming to sort of cause a problem, right? And there's surprising, to me, as an uneducated person in this world, there's surprising ways that the need is actually much different, maybe, or at least additional to just that, right? We want to be told one version, but Ukrainian folks are coming to,
Right.
so maybe, I guess my point is maybe part of the work also is to, not just to learn, but to be ready to be surprised by what's happening, to ready to undo those narratives that we've been taught, so that we might more fully respond to a world that's actually a little bit different, or to a local community that's maybe a little bit different than we think that we actually know.
Yes, and I will say that under President Obama, we deported more people than we've ever deported before in the United States. We're seeing President Trump is, they've got TV cameras, and I think maybe Dr. Phil was at so we're seeing all of this, and we're hearing every day the numbers of people that they're deporting, and they're sending them to Guantanamo, and it's horrific. And yet the numbers of people being deported every day are lower than they were under President Biden. Still. That doesn't mean they'll stay that way, but that's where they are right now. And so what we're getting is a media-driven fear and worry, and hearing that there's all these numbers of criminals here, but that's not what we're seeing in reality. Right now, fortunately, the deportations aren't as high, and now they're scrubbing the data, and we're going to lose the ability to count anymore because we aren't able to track in the ways that we could. But yeah, the surprising thing is the fear is heightened, but the reality is not exactly what the fear would tell you it is right now.
Feels important to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any more questions before we. Don, do you want to? Don Compier. Then I've seen a couple other hands that will run.
Oh, now you have
Don,
one of my seminary professors asking me a question.
Dr. Compier. I am proud of you. Don't use the mic.
Now I'm real nervous. You're not going to grade me or anything, are you?
No, I wanted to return to your point about hope, and I just want to say that one of the things that's given me great hope is the rapid response of your organization in collaboration with the Executive Council, the Episcopal Policy Network, government relations, and I mean, I have been involved in human rights since high school. Okay, I've done a lot of these things. Your ducks are in a row. They really are. So one of the things I really recommend that everybody do is sign up for the newsletters, right? You can do that on the Episcopal Church website, and make sure you get the updates that come out quite regularly from all of the things I've mentioned, right? And they have this button you hit, and you go right away to a place where it's very easy. I mean, within seconds, you can send a letter to your congressmen and senators. And once you're in there, you don't have to fill the data again. They keep it somehow. So it's very easy to write like 5-10 letters a day if you want to, in response to the leadership that you and all those other people are in coordination with you're providing. So this is a tremendous thing, and I think we all need to take advantage of it. And it just gives you hope that you're doing something, you know? We all know that we're not sure our senators listen all the time, but we're told that the more mail they get, the more likely it is they will, right?
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you, and that gives me a great chance to mention, we have at the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society, the Office of Government Relations, the legal team, Episcopal Migration Ministries, we've all combined and created an immigration toolkit. So if you go to episcopalchurch.org, you're going to see a big, beautiful picture that says Immigration Toolkit, and if you click on it, it gives you everything. It gives you the church's policies related to immigration and all of the General Convention resolutions. It gives you all of the ways that we are asking for people to engage at the federal level and work with your federal officials and tell them your thoughts. It gives you all of the information about what your rights are as an individual when an ICE agent comes, or what your rights are when ICE agent comes to your work. All of the information you need to prepare yourselves if somebody you know is deported, how to find somebody in detention, all of that is collected in one place. And we are adding to it as people tell us what they need. So what we don't have yet is a good way to work at the grassroots state level, and we're talking about that, but it's hard for the few of us to work in all of the states. So that would be something, if you could talk to your state legislators.
Mother Rita, I think it's like...
Hi, I have a question about the issue of the church as sanctuary.
Okay.
And has that been suspended, but not suspended, but no longer recognized? And if so, is that legal?
So sanctuary is a theological concept, not a legal concept. So there is no right to sanctuary under the law. Under President Obama, I think, there was a memo that was issued that told ICE agents not to go into certain locations, churches, schools, hospitals. They didn't have to follow that, but that was sort of the directive of the president. President Trump has rescinded that memo, so ICE agents are free to go into all of those places. There's all sorts of things about different types of warrants, and I don't want to answer questions about that and steer you wrong, but what I will say is under the law, there is no such thing as sanctuary. Now, theologically, there might be.
I know we have two more questions, and Sarah has graciously offered to stay and chat. So I want to be respectful of time of the group's time, but
Sure.
I think that is it okay if people have questions afterwards?
Yeah,
we can
absolutely.
come up. So I saw. Oh, we're gonna have too many to get through here, everybody. So we'll do our best.
I'll answer briefly.
Unfortunately, I have two questions. Say this church were to identify itself as a sanctuary church, even though that means nothing. And I stood at the door back here when ICE came and I said, "You're not coming in." They could just haul me off. Probably.
So they have to talk to somebody with authority, and if they have a warrant, a judicial warrant, I don't want to say any more than that. I think that my suggestion would be talk to your rectors, your bishops, your chancellors, and develop a policy that one person talks to an ICE agent if they come, and one person only, and know who that is.
Yeah. Okay, my other question, strength in numbers. You hear that phrase. This wonderful cloud of witnesses is inspiring, but I'm wondering how do we connect with people? I mean, I'm sure these things are going on all over the country. I know nothing about any of this. I can't find colleagues other than my small circle of friends. Is there any website, national, something that go right there? I mean, you've talked about the Episcopal piece.
So we have the Episcopal Migration Response Network. If you go to the Episcopal Church's website, click on that immigration toolkit. There is an Episcopal Migration Response Network where we connect Episcopalians all across the country. It started as a way to find people who were in detention and make sure there was a parish nearby who was looking out and checking in on people's loved ones. But we're connecting. We have monthly meetings where we connect Episcopalians who are interested in this work.
Presbyterian be interested?
Absolutely.
Presbyterians can support the Episcopal.
They can.
We'll do one there here.
And I'll stay and answer questions.
Hi, I wanted to ask one question, or two questions. The first is, I thought I had read somewhere in the newspaper, the Times, that the Episcopal Church was one of the plaintiffs in a lawsuit that was being brought in these cases, or in some of these cases. Can you respond to that?
Yes, there was a lawsuit filed in response to the suspension of sensitive locations, which was the memo that kept ICE from coming into churches. And so the Episcopal Church has joined as a plaintiff in that lawsuit arguing freedom of religion and the fact that ICE may be standing outside having a chilling effect on religious freedom. So yes, we are one of a bunch of plaintiffs in that case.
And technically, how does the...
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Yeah, including the Presbyterians.
How does the Episcopal Church decide to become a plaintiff in a case? At what level, or who decides?
Well, it is not me, I can tell you that. So we have counsel, there's the chief counsel, there's chancellors, there's the council for the executive council. Bishop Diane might know better than I do how we decide what cases we litigate, but there's a whole process that is somebody other, I'm not on that team.
My second question has to do with immigrants who are here not as refugees, but just have come here on their own because of either economic problems at home or things like that, or to join family. What is the status of those folks now?
Well, so again, it all depends on how they got here and what documentation they may or may not have. So some of those people come and are seeking asylum, so they are in the asylum process. Some of them are coming with temporary protected status. Some of them just immigrate to the U.S. and have a green card. So it depends, it's very individualized. There's about 15 different statuses you can have. So I can't answer that specifically, I'm sorry.
At least two things I want to say before we close. I know some of you have questions, but Sarah will stick around. There's two things I want to say at least. One is if you would like to financially support the good work that Sarah and her team do, the QR code there at the back of the church will go directly to Episcopal Migration Ministries. So
Thank
you.
you.
Can scan that code, and your money will go to support, directly support their work. If anything is left in the plate back there, the St. Paul's will collect it and send it to the same place. So and the other thing I want to say is thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for being here. What a gift you are to the church.
Thank you.
And to the work that you and your team do. We're so grateful for you and for your time tonight. Would you join me in thanking Sarah one more time? We are thrilled to welcome our bishop-elect, who will join us as our bishop in May. Amy Kaplan-Bo, bishop-elect Bo, is here tonight, which is such a gift to us. Thank you for being here. I think Jose has a microphone that will share with you there.
Thank you. May I offer two prayers? Thank you. I find myself on the edge of tears for two reasons. One, in deep gratitude. Thank you, Sarah, for your leadership here tonight, for the way that you've empowered us in ministry, Thank you. And so when I find myself in this emotional space, I give thanks that we are people of a book that has prayers written in it that I can read. So I'd like to offer two for us this evening. The first comes from the order of evening prayer. The Lord be with you. Let's pray. Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary, bless the dying, soothe the suffering, pity the afflicted, shield the joyous, and all for your love's sake. Amen. This other prayer comes from prayers for use by a sick person, but it might be my most favorite prayer in the prayer book, and I commend it to you. It's on page 461, and it is a prayer for the morning, but we're going to adapt it for the evening. Let us pray. Tomorrow is another day, O Lord, and we know not what it will bring, but make us ready for whatever it may be. If we are to stand up, help us to stand bravely. If we are to sit still, help us to sit quietly. If we are to lie low, help us to do it patiently. And if we are to do nothing, let us do it gallantly. Make these words more than words, and give us the Spirit of Jesus. Amen.